So this time in the show, we're talking to Sarah Bell. And Sarah Bell is the co-founder and the Chief Operating Officer and CMO of Aire. And she's most well known for a beautiful product called Rita. So Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
You have just been on the stage at Inman and been invited to speak, which is a massive, massive coup. So congratulations.
Thank you.
But tell us a little bit about what you shared on stage today. There were some massive takeaways that I know the audience loved.
So the panel was about how AI is changing real estate for consumers, and it kind of begged this debate about whether robots will replace real estate agents, especially when we're talking about the customer interface. And I kind of have the view that the real estate agent will remain central and very important in the transaction. And I think one of the points that we talked about yesterday was, this thinking that a job has to be done by either a robot or a human. Mm-hmm. It's kind of flawed thinking about this technology because, as human beings, we already work in teams. We work in teams with creative people, with people who are great at, financial intelligence or business intelligence. And machine intelligence, I think, will become just an essential member of the team. It's not always a question of whether or not it's a robot or an agent. I think that a much better question is how can we connect human beings to computers so that collectively they can be more intelligent together.
Yeah, well, I must admit I heard something yesterday saying that personalisation is AI plus human, which I thought was really cool, which is I know exactly what you're all about. So, and I think on that point, most people really know you as Rita's mum, right? But you actually had a background before you became Rita's mum. So tell us a little bit about your journey and what your background is.
Yeah, so I had a strange kind of trajectory in and out of real estate. My first job at uni was doing quantitative statistics and research for my professors at uni. So some of the stuff that Rita does, I actually used to do with a pencil and a bit of very, very basic software. But the world's moved on and so did I. After uni, I was recruited into the Commonwealth Ombudsman as I worked as an investigator for a while. And then I met this tall bloke who happened to be in real estate. And pretty quickly after we met, we made a decision to purchase his family real estate agency. And I spent the next sort of decade in the business and made a point of learning every job and went on to study business and really kind of take apart real estate and use those analytical skills to find ways to put it back together in a machine that would work better.
Well, I think this is really important actually, because the fact that you actually have been so heavily involved in real estate is what actually really gives you the power behind it and why I think Rita is so special. So tell us a little bit about Rita and what she's really all about, her personality and what makes her think and tick.
Yeah, sure. Well, Rita is, it's an acronym, and I'll clear that up right now. Rita stands for Real Estate Intelligent Transaction Assistant. And
Rita's way more fun.
Yeah, Rita's faster. And she's not designed to replace the agent. She's not designed to kind of be disruptive. She's designed to be supportive technology. And I think that we're at a place in real estate where agents really demand that of technology. So what Rita does is, the identity problem that we found is that real estate agents have all of this data that they don't know what to do with. And, you take data that's sitting in the CRM and it's kind of all of this latent opportunity. The CRM is really a warehouse of opportunity.
Well, it's all collection and no engagement.
That's right. And a lot of the analysis that we've done, a lot of the research that we've done shows that, agents just aren't making that human-to-human engagement. So what Rita's really famous for is taking all of that latent opportunity and then mashing it against some other data, so data from the marketplace, and giving those contacts and those relationships some context and some purpose, and then suggesting to agents who would be the best people to contact each and every day in order to convert data into opportunity.
So does it work? Like, you must have some great case studies.
Yeah, we do, and we've been really grateful and lucky that the clients that came on board early have allowed us to really partner with them and refine what we're doing. Part of Rita being born and growing up has been her learning, and we do that through feedback. So Rita's essentially getting smarter and better all of the time. But some of the algorithm or some of the math has outputs that put conversion from data to appraisal anywhere from 20 to 35%.
Yeah. Well, I think what's really interesting is that most agents have been hearing about AI for a little while now. And to, I think, most of the industry, it's super scary because it's just like this amazing thing which is going to kind of take over and they don't really know how to implement it. So can you kind of just run us through, like, I guess, how, Rita comes in as AI and how it essentially helps the business and how it's kind of different to a lot of other bots?
Yeah, sure. Well, there's kind of two ways of looking at AI. So you can look at it like a tool, and I think when you have things like chatbots that you use or you react with or you ask questions of and they return answers, it feels like software that you use. And then there's also this other camp which Rita kind of sits in where she's not so much a tool but a colleague. So unlike a chatbot where you're kind of going to dial in and ask for answers, Rita's more of a proactive suggestion engine. So we've created her and engineered her to feel like the dream assistant.
The dream assistant.
The dream assistant, and it's funny. There is such a thing. It comes in technology form because you don't have to manage her. There's no burden to actually having that staff. There's no emotional overhead. There's no. It's certainly the cost overhead is much lower, and she's infinitely scalable. If you get really busy, you don't need to read it. She can just expand and amplify what she does. But in terms of how you work with Rita, you don't have to train her. Out of the box, she analyzes the CRM and understands, she reads every single note in the CRM, so understands the context of every single relationship in your business.
That's a pretty sexy notion, really, isn't it?
Right, so straight out of the box, you're going to have this fully cognizant, fully trained employee that you don't really have to spend any time getting up to speed. And then the next thing that's really cool about that, the way I explain this to people is, remember back in the day, and I don't want to give away my age too much, but back in the day when
super young, babe.
when the CRM was, a list of cards in a Rolodex, and that system in its simplicity kind of worked because you just pulled out the first 20 cards, made 20 phone calls, put them at the back, and as that cycled through, you'd sort of talk to everyone. But then what happened with software is that we took that visibility away, and we had to then manually search and create call lists and do that data search and planning.
We had more.
Yeah, and we had much more. So we did that data search and planning ourselves. But I try and explain Rita in her most simple way as this magical assistant that comes in every night, reads every single card in the Rolodex, looks through everything that's happened in your marketplace and picks the best people for you to call, and then leaves them for you to call in exactly the best order. So she might suggest 20 opportunities for you to connect with, and if you've only got 4, if you call the first 4, they're going to be the best 4. If you've only got time to call 4. So the whole thing's prioritized, and the whole thing's prioritized and optimized, and understanding that agents have this resourcing challenge where they need to, meet fluctuating demand in the marketplace, and it's very difficult for a human being when you're the supply, when you're the product.
Yeah.
So she's really capable of adapting and understanding how agents work, and she's not she's supportive, she's not demanding, she doesn't kind of punish agents for being human.
And I guess that's where the heart-to-heart connection sort of comes in, the fact that you still pick up the phone, but you're actually just really making sure that you've got this super hyper kind of time efficient kind of what would you say, ability to be able to contact the best leads.
Absolutely, and I think it's also about identifying a purpose for a phone call. So if you take like a traditional trail, if you like through the CMA, there's no natural anthropological conversation that happens on day 18, right? And again on day 24. That's awkward, to call someone and say, well, it's day 18 and my computer says I should call you.
Yeah, it's very artificial.
Yeah, so Rita's also, as well as suggesting who you should call with, she's suggesting reasons that you might connect with them. So an example of that is she might notice that 15 Smith Street's come on the market, and if as an agent the property owners of number 8 and number 12, she's going to suggest that you get in contact with your property owners to let them know about the new event that's happened in their street. It's a brand messaging about being a market expert. It's a very current position for a real estate agent to take. And the context of the conversation that you have with property owners should change and should be hyper relevant based on what's happening in their direct location. So she's really trying to support the agent to be that local expert without them having to constantly monitor and constantly do all that mental labour to be in that position and defend it.
Well, I absolutely love that you explained that, because I think for a lot of people it's kind of, we all know that AI is absolutely spectacular and it's all going to change our lives, but we don't know how. So thank you so much for going through that. Look, we don't have a lot of time, but I just wanted to run through some quick rapid fire questions. So tell me, Sarah, structure or chaos?
You got to have both. You've got too much structure, things are rigid and you can't innovate. But if you have too much chaos, no one knows what's happening and there's no normal.
Your favourite time wasting app?
I would say Facebook, but I would debate whether or not that's time facing.
Apple or Windows?
Apple.
Apple, love it. Tech gadget that totally changed your world?
The iPhone. We're heading in a direction where the smartphone's going to have more computing power than the human race. It's not going to change.
And what was the tech gadget that did it?
iWatch.
iWatch, yeah, okay, very cool. Well,
over-notified.
For Sarah, one of the things that I absolutely love about what it is that you're doing is that you come from such a strong real estate background, because I think a lot of people who are sort of transitioning into this industry don't really have that kind of grassroots kind of level knowledge of, what it actually takes to kind of, and be in the practice of, hey, listen, I've got to do this and I've also got to do these 10 other things today. And I think that's so absolutely powerful. So why don't you tell us a bit about your journey when you actually started, I guess, how you came to be about Aire?
Sure. Aire's kind of a full circle journey for me. So I started, my first job was doing, quantitative statistical analysis for my professors, and I went on to be an investigator at the Commonwealth Ombudsman. Met a real estate agent, got married, had a bunch of kids, kind of got abducted into the industry when we, took on the family business. And so for me, it became, a research enterprise. I can't really work any other way.
Yeah.
And so that, the decade that I spent in real estate was really interesting. I worked every single job. I sold, I managed, I was a property manager. I even spent a pregnancy sitting on front desk because I really wanted to understand the challenge of that triage of demand and how that came into the agency and
so
what happened after that. Yeah, I absolutely did.
I love that.
I don't think it's appropriate for a leader to expect anyone else to do something they wouldn't do or that they don't understand. And it was very important for me to get to the granular detail of every single role.
Yeah.
And that's been incredibly helpful in helping to engineer not only how readers designed to work with the people in a real estate business, because they kind of understand what they're up against.
Yes.
I've seen it, I've felt it, and one of the things we don't talk about in real estate is this resourcing issue. You have human beings have a fixed supply of their time. You can only work 8 hours a day. You can work 10 hours a day, you can work 15 hours a day, but probably not for long. What you can expect is to reasonably work a capped limit of time. And you
our
can
mentality is really changing about that too, I think, because for a very long time people have always sort of wanted to kind of, work 24/7, whereas now I think people's mentality is changing where they actually want to have some time outside of work in addition to in work. So what it is that you're talking about is super powerful.
Exactly. We've been talking about working smarter for so long, and that's been fine, but there's been no how to do that. So
concept.
Yeah, so you could work less and smarter, but without the tool to kind of do that, you were just really working less.
Yeah.
Whereas AI's response understanding that agents didn't really need more technology. They kind of needed a resourcing solution that was capable of producing work outcomes so that they could apply their human resources, limited and fixed human resources, where they were most valuable, and have this inexhaustible artificial robot resource to scale infinitely as required.
Yes.
And also not require a whole lot of cost or training overhead. And that's kind of the magic of our time. That's the hope of AI.
So tell us a little bit about Rita, because I think a lot of people know that she's around, but there's still this magic and this kind of curtain where they don't really know how Rita works and what she really essentially does. So.
Yeah, one of the panelists from Inman yesterday said that AI should feel indistinguishable from magic, and I thought that was a great takeaway because a lot of the how she does things, people want to understand it in granular detail, but I think if you can understand it simply as like a colleague that works with you and like the ideal assistant that's going to suggest things for you to do in a way that's optimized and prioritized so you can really focus your time is kind of the best way to understand it. But yeah, look, what I think I've seen over the last decade of real estate is this journey on how we adopt technology. And I remember back when I first started and we had this real human to human era, there was still very much a high street mentality where you had the real estate office and the bank and the lawyer and we all knew each other, and transactions kind of happened in this local economy. And then sort of globalization happened and we went digital, and the promise of digital was that you could scale. And so we got into this trap with technology of using it to broadcast. And, it was great. We could talk to more people. We could do more things. But the payoff or the trade-off of that was the intimacy of human relationships. And so what we sort of have seen through our research is that, the engagement, one of the cool things that Rita can report on for managers and sales agents, she uses natural language processing to understand the difference between a human-to-human engagement and just an email blast or a lower value kind of generic engagement. She can isolate those high-value engagements and then give you feedback data on the spread of people that you're talking to and also how frequently. So what we're finding is that for most agents, when we first start working with them, kind of 80 to 90% of their database has been disengaged for longer than 5 months.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a relationship, if you haven't had a conversation with someone in 5 to 6 months, they're not your customer because you don't have a relationship.
Yeah. They're a contact.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we stopped seeing people as people during this transition into the digital world, and we started seeing them as contacts.
Yeah, as numbers.
And as a customer, the experience is, feeling like just a number.
Correct.
Right? We got the flashy marketing and all that stuff going on, but kind of lost the care factor.
Yeah. And that's what people want today. They want
Absolutely.
that on steroids.
And it's the only way to cut through the noise. So what AI is able to do is allow to, keep a return on that promise of scale, but offer you hyper-personalization. So all of the processing that you need to do to work out who to call and what to say, that's great work for a robot because they can put all those Lego bricks together between the relationship data, the contact frequency, the geography, what's happening in the marketplace, and mash that all together so that each and every day you know exactly what to do with the limited time that you have, and and really kind of make good on that personalization focus.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a really interesting point because I think most of the industry probably thinks AI is taking jobs away from the industry, not actually adding to the whole experience. And I think we've kind of really 10 years ago, we were the gatekeepers of information. So that was why, people came to us to sell their properties because they needed us to really inform them about what their price was going to be. And now, that information is readily available to them. So it now needs to be about the experience of actually what the journey is going to be like for their transaction. And to them, it's not a transaction. It's an emotional and spiritual ride.
Exactly. And in terms of being the gatekeepers of information, I agree. I think that horse bolted a long time ago. The internet democratized knowledge. It's done it in the medical field. It's done it in the legal field. And kind of what the internet is now is almost this content wasteland of just so much information. It's why Google exists, to organize and deliver information. So it begs the question, what is the human skill that's valuable in all of that? And I think when you have so much content, there's a real human skill in interpreting, making meaning, drawing sense from that, and then delivering that in a hyper-personal way that's hyper-relevant. So
I love that you actually value that, because I think a lot of people are really trying to do things and really segment their businesses to not be personalised, to make a system and a process for other people all the time, but really the lead agent or the agents and the principals in the business are the ones, or the property managers or the BDMs are the ones that really need to be picking up the phone and actually having those connections with people, whether it be sending videos or phone calls. And I think that's the part that really a lot of people don't understand from AI.
Yeah, look, my kind of postgrad study's been in strategic planning, and it's interesting when you go back to kind of the classic statement of business strategies from a Harvard professor called Porter, and there's three main business strategies, generic business strategies that work in any situation, and you kind of make a decision about which one you're going to follow. So the first one's cost leadership, which is obviously the strategy that the discounters are following. Are you going to do things at a higher volume, at a lower level of personalization, at a higher level of self-service, and be cheaper?
Yeah.
So there's a limited kind of
race to the bottom.
There's kind of a limited sort of shelf life for the industry if we all decide to go that way. And then there's differentiation, and this is really interesting because I've heard people talk about point of difference and differentiation in real estate a lot over the last 5 years, and it's been interesting as something of a spectator to see. Particularly in the Australian market, we have the same digital tools, we have the same portals that we advertise on, we have the same guys that make our signs, the same guys that print our brochures, and the industry's kind of, got itself into this position where it is actually very difficult to differentiate tangibly among the supply base. When that happens, we call that commoditization.
Yeah. But on top of all of that too, then you've also got at a listing presentation where agents are literally not talking about themselves or selling themselves and why their agency is different. They're just talking about the process.
They're talking about the toolkit, and everybody's toolkit is exactly the same, and it's certainly available for everyone to make that. So the issue with commoditization is when you can't differentiate, the only way to do it is price, and we see that symptomatically. This continual issue with defending fees when everyone's the same. The third strategy is called focus. And the focus strategy is when you put a lot of energy into creating a hyper-relevant, hyper-personal customer experience that people are prepared to pay for.
This is where the money is, right?
And it's where the money is. It's what customers want. And in a professional service industry, service is about taking knowledge and turning it into service. So if you're going to do that professionally and charge a professional fee, your service better be hyper-focused, hyper-relevant, and hyper-personalised.
Well, I think that's exactly the right point, and I think that's what's so beautiful about your business, and it's really nice to have that message out there. So, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.